Welcome to Good Screenwriting. I'm Trevor Meyer, and I am very excited to answer this question because it's such a fun one. So, character arc. Is it okay to just explore the depths of the protagonist without him changing in the end? Yes. Yes, it is. And this is not me. This is Robert McKee, Story by Robert McKee. He teaches an excellent method for developing characters, which completely redefine the way that I thought about character growth and maybe the lack of need for it. A perfect example is Iron Man. Now, in the first Iron Man, he goes through an arc. He changes. He goes from, well, there are many dimensions to his character, and Robert McKee defines dimension as sort of a duality. So, if you have one contradiction in your character, that's one dimension. If you have two contradictions, that's two dimensional. If you have three contradictions, that's three dimensional. And conceivably, you could make a 10-dimensional character. You could make a 20-dimensional character, depending on how much duality they hold inside of them. So let's simplify this just a little bit. Let's say we're tracking only one axis for Tony Stark. Let's say he starts out irresponsible, and by the end, he is responsible. So at the beginning, he's completely irresponsible. Even his friend Rhodey says so. He says, "You are constitutionally incapable of being responsible." That's the whole point. And by the end of the movie, Tony Stark has taken responsibility for himself, for his actions, for his company, for his weapons, everything. Okay? Now, the great thing about this is whether you're exploring the depths of a character or whether you're exploring the character arc, it doesn't matter as long as the opposites are there. So, in Iron Man 2, he goes back to being irresponsible again. And I don't know if he does that in Iron Man 3. Iron Man 3 is more about paranoia, but it becomes a sort of continuum where they can backtrack. It's not a one-way street. So what's so great about this over the course of a series is you can arrange these opposites in such a way that it gives the illusion of growth. All right, so let's say that he is both responsible and irresponsible depending on the situation. So if you were to start out with him acting irresponsible and end the movie in a situation where he is responsible, it looks like a character arc, but he can go back to being irresponsible at any time, and then it's not so much an arc, it's just part of who he is. It's just the complex dynamic of everything that's inside of him. So, if you imagine a three-dimensional character, for example, like I said, you can do more, but imagine a graph where you have an x-axis, a y-axis, and a z-axis. You go horizontally, you go vertically, and you go into. You have depth. You go into the screen. So if you're tracking three different dynamics and how they change over the course of the film, you get a lot of stuff to play with. But another example for him would be, let's say he starts out selfish and he ends up selfless. Okay, so in the first movie, that's really kind of one way. He starts out selfish and he ends up selfless. He's willing to sacrifice his life, in fact, to save people. Whereas at the beginning, he only thinks about himself. And that seems to be a one-time deal. That's a character growth. So what do you do with the second one? In Iron Man 2, he does go back to being selfish. And as you do that over and over again throughout the films, whether it's Iron Man 1, 2, or 3, or Avengers 1, 2, or 3, or Captain America Civil War, or Spider-Man Homecoming, all of the films in which he appears, that can just be a part of him. So it doesn't have to be a one-way street. He doesn't just learn to be selfless, and then from that point on, he is always selfless. He is always responsible. He can backtrack and become selfish again, and then overcome it again. He can go back and forth, And it doesn't have to be the same arc in every movie. He doesn't have to become responsible in every movie. He doesn't have to become selfless in every movie. He can fluctuate back and forth in the sequels. It can just be in certain situations he's selfish, in other situations he's selfless. In certain situations he's responsible, in other situations he's irresponsible. In fact, you can make the argument in Civil War he becomes almost too responsible. He's so responsible that he is actually imposing his responsibility on other people. He's saying, not only do I need to do better, we all need to do better, whether you agree or not. We need to impose limitations on ourselves, whether you think that's the right thing to do or not. So you can actually push it too far in the other direction, because any kind of extreme is usually bad. So you can, another great way to give your character an instant character flaw is to use the word too. To anything. To anything is out of balance. So you can be too irresponsible, but you can also be too responsible. You can be too selfish, but you can also be too selfless. Like, if you're not treating yourself well, that's too selfless. So that's a really easy way to throw your character out of balance and then get them back in balance by the end of it. But really, there's no difference between character growth and character depth. It's just the timeline. So at some point in the movie, he is one thing, and at another point in the movie, he is the opposite of that thing. Now, whether you're suggesting that he has changed, or whether you're suggesting that those dynamics exist in him simultaneously, it doesn't matter. You're still exploring different sides of the character, and really that just makes it more fun for the actor and more engaging for the audience. So think about that when you're writing your characters. Put together a bunch of opposites that can coexist in the character, and they either move from one end of the spectrum to the other over the course of the film, or both exist in them simultaneously, and they show those two sides at different points. So again, nothing really changes. They show opposite aspects of themselves either way. It's just whether or not you want to suggest that a change has occurred or if it's just the way they are. So it just has to do with chronology at that point. So, real handy tip. It's one of my favorite things that Robert McKee teaches. What do you think about this method? Some people don't agree with it. Some people think, it's not just that. It's more to it than that. Yes, there's more to it than that, but it's a very handy trick. So, what do you think of this method? Leave a comment in the section below. This is Good Screenwriting, and I'm Trevor Meyer. See you next time.